Welcome back to another episode of the Know Your Power podcast. I am your host, Julia Renee.
I'm Kendall Aaliyah.
And today we have Emily in the house.
Woo-hoo.
I'm going to let you do your intro because when I was doing like research for this episode, I was like, I don't know how to describe what you do in the best way that would be like understandable. So why me do it? And can you just tell the listeners like what you do?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Hi, my name is Emily Flood, and I am the founder of Fitness Witchcraft. And so I help witches and spiritual women to lose weight after trauma using depth psychology aligned body energetics. And so Fitness Witchcraft, it's not just fitness coaching and then witchcraft smushed together. It's really a methodology that I created that does involve depth psychology for health and fitness and working with guides and deities and really working with the subconscious mind to help people to like lose weight and lose all of the stuck emotions and trauma that have been built up.
I have a question about that. So did you start with more of like the witchcraft, psychology, emotion side of things, or did you start more as a fitness person and then evolved into that? Or did both just start kind of at the same time for you?
Yeah, I started with fitness. So I actually have a background in bodybuilding as well. And so I did my first bodybuilding competition in 2019 and I went the normal fitness coach route with macros and everything. But for me personally, I was seeing that my clients needed deeper things. Like it was very unsatisfying to watch them like leave my coaching program with the weight loss goals achieved and then rebounding. And so I actually got out of a narcissistic abusive relationship, and the things that helped me to recover from that both physically and mentally was the witchy stuff, working with guides and deities. And so when I thought about creating like a mindset program that could really help people deeper with this, that was where I brought it in, and then I smushed them together.
That's beautiful.
And I've really never seen anybody that smushes it together the way that you do. It was so crazy because like when we had our conversation, we just realized that like we kind of do a lot of the similar things with how we coach people. It's just like different verbiage, which is like whatever verbiage that you use, like it doesn't matter, you know?
Exactly.
And I loved that. And I want to dive deep into like how you actually do that, because one of the things that I saw from your Instagram was your little archetype quiz.
We both took it.
I love a quiz. I feel like a lot of people love quizzes because it's like, tell me who I am. You know what I mean? But that's why we all like astrology and stuff like that too. But I want to dive into like the archetypes and what brought you to using the archetypes and how you like use them in your coaching.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what were y'all's quiz results?
I screenshotted mine because I have a bad
I
memory.
was Aphrodite.
Aphrodite?
Wait.
Okay.
I was also Aphrodite. We're
Twins.
best friends for a reason.
Best friends.
And it's perfect because it's February.
I know.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So the archetype quiz, I actually reverse engineered with trauma responses, specifically for health and fitness. And so all of the questions on the quiz were related to health and fitness, but more so which of the 4 trauma responses would impact you the most. So fight, flight, freezing, or fawning.
Whoa.
And so Aphrodite actually corresponds with the fawning trauma response, which is like extreme people pleasing. And so
I'm like, yep, check.
I was honestly
check on
surprised though that that's what I got because I'm not really a people pleaser.
I feel like you're a little more like confrontational than I am, but I think in the grand scheme, like we both like making other people happy,
True.
you know?
True. And for me, I think one of the things that stuck out to me with reading it was like the people pleasing though, like in business with like always being there for somebody, like being that person that I always answer the text, always answer the emails that like to the point where I get burnt out.
yeah,
So you said fight, flight, fawning?
freezing
Freezing and
fawning.
Fawning. I said fawning. That's actually a dessert. Flan.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are the differences like between those 4?
So specifically with health and fitness.
Sure.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
However you want to explain it.
So with the fight response, that one is the least common type on the quiz, I think, because it's not as likely for women. But what I see, especially when it comes to dieting and weight loss, is it's kind of like the fitness journey. They're at war with their bodies. And then eventually they're like, well, fuck diet culture. I don't want this diet. And then it's like a fight between them and diet culture, and then a fight between them and their bodies. And so the trauma response kicks in because they're like fighting against themselves, and then eventually like go binge eat because they're like, fuck it. The flight trauma response, I paired with Persephone because Persephone kind of she has to have that staying power when she's going to the underworld and everything for 6 months. And then she can't stay there forever. And she has to get into situations that are uncomfortable where she grows. And so people with the flight response, they're the types of people that they'll go all or nothing. They'll go all in on the fitness and the nutrition. And then a couple weeks later, they get burnt out and they run away, especially if they're less than perfect. And so then the freezing response, I put with the Morrigan archetype, because the Morrigan is a Celtic goddess of war and death, but also self-sovereignty. And so people who have that freeze response, they feel like they're stuck. They feel like nothing's going to work from them. That's really characterized by a lot of dissociation, which can come in with binge eating, emotional eating, using alcohol and other substances to cope with your emotions.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And so the Morrigan, I paired with that because she kind of is like, you're not stuck. That's kind of the lesson that I take from that goddess of like, even no matter how much you think that you're stuck, like you can get yourself out of this situation. And so that's the freezing response. And then fawning, as we kind of just talked about, it's like that people pleasing and like caring about what people like, the food dishes that you order. Oh, people are going to judge me if I order the burger. Oh, but people are going to judge me if I order the salad. And how much that impacts people's health and fitness journeys, like not being able to turn down grandma's second helping of pie at Thanksgiving.
Wow, that's really cool.
I think that's so interesting because it really does pertain to all aspects of your life. And it is easy the way you lay it out to be like, oh, this is how you respond to fitness, or maybe not seeing progress, or maybe seeing progress, but then self-sabotaging or going other routes. So
I've never heard anyone like explain it in those type of ways, because there are different like quote unquote like personality types when it comes to like your response to health and fitness, like how you feel about it. Because I feel like I've definitely dabbled in a little bit of each one at a certain point where it's like it's all or nothing, or I just like freeze and it's like information overload and I don't know what to do. Or like, what was the other one? Oh, there was another one that I really related to.
Fighting.
Yeah, that where it's just like I've had some of those moments like in prep where I feel like I'm fighting my body, and it's almost like the fight of itself is what's causing me to not have any response. So like I kind of want to dive into that and how these certain responses correlate with people's bodies and the results that they may or may not get.
Yeah, absolutely. So anytime you are in a state of overwhelm or anxiety or stress, that actually turns on your survival brain, that lower limbic system of the brain, getting into the neuroscience here. And so that sends your brain into fight, flight, freezing, or fawning. And so it doesn't necessarily matter which one, it's that your brain's survival mode is turned on. And your brain, when you're in survival mode, it just wants to keep you alive. And the easiest way to keep you alive is to have you do the exact same thing that you did yesterday. If the exact same thing that you did yesterday was binge eat or get home after work and sit on the couch and eat potato chips, that is what your brain will push you to do because you've survived that before.
And it's like subconsciously programmed that this is just what we do.
Exactly. And changing, going to the gym, choosing even like a healthier relationship for yourself or changing your body, your lizard brain might be like, we might die. We don't know what that future might hold for us.
Because we haven't done that yet.
Exactly.
We haven't tried that yet.
Yeah. And so if we want to create a different reality for ourselves, we have to get out of those trauma responses so that we don't keep like living Groundhog's Day on a loop.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's so cool. My question is, when you're coaching women, like how do you use these archetypes to help them, I guess, like relate into their own journey?
Yeah, so the archetype quiz in particular, it helps people bring awareness to how their trauma responses are impacting health and fitness, because I think for most of the world, we think of fight, flight, freezing, and fawning with like relationships per se, or like actual traumatic situations, and not how that still plays out in other areas of our life. And so when it comes to working with clients, I don't like necessarily distinguish between, oh, you're the Morrigan archetype, you need this, because everyone kind of needs the same things to get out of those responses. And I use a somatic emotional embodiment tool with my clients that helps them to process those emotions and like get them out of their body instead of compartmentalizing it like we've all kind of been taught to do our entire lives.
Yeah. What does that look like?
So it involves a mix of, so I know a lot of somatics out there, it kind of looks like you're just shaking your hip on the bed and everything, but it's an activity that involves them moving while processing deeper through the emotions. And it's also an emotional capacity expansion tool. And what I mean by that, it's like if a trigger, like if you're on a balance beam, a metaphorical balance beam, and like a trigger comes along and it knocks you off the balance beam and you get thrown off for a week, this tool helps you to expand that balance beam into like a sidewalk, where you could still trip off the sidewalk if it were a really big trigger, but maybe you just stumble now and then you catch yourself, and like an hour or two later, a day or two later, you're back on the wagon, so to speak. And so it expands your capacity to be triggered by those daily life things. And so then the little annoyances, the little things like traffic or, you know, moms with kids and everything, they're not being impacted quite as deeply because they have taught their body that they are safe to feel stress and feel overwhelmed and feel anger and rage and all of those emotions that might have otherwise like sent them like falling off the wagon.
True. I feel like we often get really scared of our emotions, like when they come up, whether it is like fear, anger, jealousy, like any of these like lower vibration frequencies, like we get really scared that we're even having that experience at all, which just like makes it worse. Cause like I know for me, when I'm feeling anxious, I now am anxious that I am anxious. And it's just kind of like a spiral that you start going, and then you're like, now, you start feeling like you're crazy.
Yeah.
And one thing that I've been seeing a lot of, and I'm curious if it's the same thing, I've been seeing it in like TikTok, on like Pinterest, that people are doing like somatic workouts. Is that similar to the thing that you do?
Not necessarily. And so I guess the somatic workouts that I've mostly seen on social media and Pinterest and everything, it's just kind of like shaking your hips and like a little bit of that. And I'm not going to say that that doesn't work because I haven't fully tried it, but that is not exactly what I do with my clients. I still have them go to the gym like normal and everything, but the somatic activity that I do with them, it does involve like shaking and releasing energy from the body, but it's like you don't have to move your hips in an exact perfect way.
Okay. I love that. Yeah, because I keep seeing stuff like that, and I'm like, how does that work?
Yeah.
Are these tactics that you learned and used for yourself? Like you had talked about getting out of that like negative relationship and that negative space. Are these things that you did and you were like, I need to teach, or I want to teach other people how to do this so that they can heal? Or was it a different path that brought you to wanting to teach it to other people?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was after I got out of that narcissistic abusive relationship, like I had done bodybuilding, right? I had the body and like I'd released binge eating and all of these things. But like after that relationship, like my body was in such a state of like hypervigilance and fear. It was like, I logically knew that I was in a safe place, but my body was like, are you sure? He could walk in here. He could drive to Austin. He didn't even live in Austin. He could come in with a gun and hurt your dog. And like all of these things.
I was in the exact same boat also. Like I remember being in that state and it feeling like, oh, this is just going to last forever.
Yes.
It's scary to think you can get out of that, you know?
It's scary that it's like not happening anymore, but you like your body still feels that it's happening and it's still as real as it is as it was then.
Exactly.
And so you like were holding on to all of that?
Yeah. And I want to say something here for the listeners too, because sometimes we say like, oh, you shouldn't be anxious going to the gym because people aren't looking at you. Well, I was anxious going to the gym because I would dissociate at the gym, and then I would suddenly be in my thoughts and he would be abusing me in my thoughts. And so like I was scared to go to the gym also because men at the time.
True.
And so thankfully in Austin, I was going to a gym where I could bring my dog. And so I brought my dog because she helped me to stay grounded. But then it really was these somatic like tools that helped me to release that pent up fear that I was so scared of. Like when all of it happened, I like shoved it behind a wall. I was like, I don't want to think about how I was just abused for 7-8 months in this relationship. I wanted to shove it behind a wall and not think about it. And then therefore I like to joke that it's like shoving a poltergeist in the closet and it's like, it's still there screaming constantly. And then I was able to release it from my body to where I don't have like PTSD flashbacks anymore, which is massive.
Yeah, that's huge.
That is huge. So one of the things that I know you work a lot with your clients is helping them release like that energy from their body. So I kind of want you to speak to like, how does this happen? Like, how does this stuff get trapped? And what is like the cycle that we go through where we do like hide the poltergeist like in the back? Because I'm really curious to that, because I know that I've had experiences in my life where I only realized later what I was holding on to that it took me a year to release. So I'm just curious of like what that looks like with your clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And so to speak to that, like we're not actually taught how to process our emotions, especially as women. We hear all of this stuff of like, women are emotional, you're an emotional woman. And so I thought I was processing my emotions, but what I was really doing was I was really good at like logicking. Oh, I know why I'm feeling anxious and like finding the reasons why, but that was like the brain level. The body level wasn't being taken care of. And so it's really all about showing your body and therefore like your survival brain that you are safe to feel all of these emotions. And so I know we've talked about binge eating, but like I didn't feel safe to feel certain emotions around food because I would hurt myself in a way with binge eating when I was having these emotions. And so when you can kind of start to realize that you keep yourself safe when you have emotions, that emotions will not hurt you or kill you unless you do, then it's like it's easier to move through it without sending yourself into a freeze response. Because if we get into this state, even where we're like joking, like, oh, I'm scared, I'm freaked out, this is going to be the end, I'm spiraling, even saying those words will send our body into being like, oh my gosh.
We are spiraling.
We are spiraling.
We're dying.
We better send her into a freeze response so
Yeah.
that she doesn't do anything or that we don't die.
Yeah. I love the topic. I love the topic of binge eating because all three of us in this room have struggled with it, have healed from it and gone through it. So I love hearing different people's stories because I know this is a topic that a lot of people struggle with and that's not talked about enough because we talk a lot about not eating enough, which that's its own thing in itself. And it is very difficult, I'm sure. I know a lot of followers that have reached out to me with the same problem as well. But then on the flip side, you can do a lot of damage to yourself physically and mentally by overeating, eating in excess too. So I remember when I was struggling a lot that I would fear those emotions. I would fear if I got anxious, if I got lonely, if I got angry, because those three were the ones that, or if I got overly exhausted. Like for example, I'm on my period. Kendall and I have synced our periods up.
We're both on our period.
We're both on our period. And yesterday I was absolutely trashed. I did like 2 really hard workouts, Tuesday and Monday. Today's my rest day. And I had multiple calls where I had to be there emotionally for my clients, which they always energize me and lift me up. And I was like, I don't know if I'm going to make it because my back is hurting. I was like hunched over. And my first thought was, oh, I am overly tired and exhausted. What if I binge? And in the past, I would have let that like spiral. I would have been like, oh my God, I don't want to feel this because if I feel this, it can lead to X, Y, and Z. And after years of work, I just was like, I just choose not to. And then I just like moved on, which was crazy. And it was like this small moment. What happened to you like during that time where you realized that you didn't actually have to fear these feelings? Like, what did you do to stop fearing the feelings?
Yeah. And it was this idea that no one else or no external situation could make me safe because I am the only one that can make me safe. And so I think this is really easy for people who have been through trauma because after you've gone through that, no one can make you feel safe if you don't feel safe on the inside, right?
True.
That anxiety.
It's like if you wear an outfit and your friend's like, girl, it looks amazing. And you're like, but I don't feel amazing. So it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so it was coming into that knowledge of like, I make myself safe. And so I make myself safe around food. And a lot of what I ended up doing was in order to trust my body again, especially after bodybuilding and leptin and ghrelin and hunger signals get all messed up and everything, was I did a lot of intuitive building exercises. So at first it was just like pulling a tarot card a day because that is still technically your body picking the card. And so it was a little sneaky roundabout way of starting to trust my body again after extreme bodybuilding preps of building my intuition.
Yeah, because it definitely, like when you're in bodybuilding, like there's a point that it gets fried because you're a robot, chicken, rice, broccoli, asparagus, whatever it might be. You just doing the same thing every day to get a specific result, which is, sometimes what you've signed up for, but that intuitive feeling that is usually natural to us, like when we're born, is like fried and severed because you no longer listen to it. You're no longer quote unquote allowed to listen to it because you've signed up to eat a specific plan, to go to certain extremes, to reach a level of a physique that only a small percentage of people will. So what was it like for you after bodybuilding, like helping that and getting back to just eating? Because we call it intuitive eating. And which is really just eating, you know what I mean? Like like, we have a name for it, but that's just like at our baseline when we're children, we don't think about what is she going to think about what I'm eating, or the portion sizes, or is this going to make me skinny? Is this going to make me fat? Is this too many calories? We just eat. We're just kids, and it gets ruined by us, society, diet culture, all of these things. So what did you do to get back to just eating?
Yeah. And one thing that I really had to do with building this self-trust again was I had to stop like wondering and stop fearing like, oh my gosh, what if I gain weight? Oh my gosh, what if having this real Starbucks drink today makes me gain 5 pounds? And
real Starbucks drink without the sugar-free
the part
syrup.
that we understand that.
I know. It's like, I know what you mean.
Exactly. And so because what people are doing and what I was doing when I was like freaking out and like analyzing things in the mirror every day was sending my brain into a trauma response of fearing the scale, fearing what I looked like, fearing that my worth, especially as what I was just a normal fitness coach at the time, was dependent on what I looked like. And so when I stopped sending my brain into fear and started really trusting my body a lot more and trusting myself not to hurt myself with binge eating, that is when I really was able to start listening to my hunger signals on a deeper level. And I mean, the interesting thing is that sometimes our cravings have deeper subconscious meanings and like deeper subconscious needs that are being expressed. And so when I learned how to see what my body was really trying to tell me with certain cravings, then it was like I didn't dislike and didn't distrust my body for sending me cravings anymore either. Yeah.
I feel like it's almost baby steps in the beginning where you have to make conscious efforts to be intuitive, if that makes sense, of like, hey, like force yourself to trust yourself, force yourself to take this one step or that one decision. And then eventually you wake up and you're like, oh, I don't have to think about it anymore. I don't have to force this anymore. Do you feel like when you work with clients, are they usually quick to be receptive and be like, oh, I'm ready to work through this emotional trauma and get to that place? Or do you feel like you often are met with a little bit of pushback or people who aren't quite ready yet?
It's a little bit of both. It's like a lot of clients come to me and they know that they need to work on the emotional side of things. And of course, there's the big old closet full of poltergeists. Like they don't even want to open that because
it's hard to know that you're able to face it sometimes without having guidance like you as a coach.
Exactly. And so what I tell my clients is like, we are not going to pull your biggest trauma out of the closet. No, you're going to feel safe feeling annoyed that traffic is coming, right? Or annoyed at your coworker, or face these smaller emotions first to build up that trust so that when eventually a major trauma trigger hits, that you know that you've already built up a level of safety so that you can work through it when it eventually happens.
That makes sense.
I'm curious, like, what kind of practices do you use to help the women in your coaching program do this? Because I love like tactical things that our listeners can start doing like right now to not like fear their feelings.
Yeah. And so something that you guys can do right now is we already know that we can make ourselves feel unsafe at any moment, right? Pull up social media, pull up something about gun violence or war or anything on the news.
Just turn on the news. Yeah, just turn on the news.
And you will make yourself feel unsafe. And so if that is true, therefore the opposite is true, and you can make yourself feel safe at any moment. And so something that your listeners and you guys can do is to think of a memory. And sometimes people will say, oh, I don't have a memory of being safe in this lifetime. And that's actually where past lives could come in, because you could like ask your guides for like, okay, when is a memory that I have felt safe, even if it's not in this lifetime? And
the loudest.
Sorry.
Yeah. And really like notice where that feeling of safety is in your body. You can ask yourself, okay, what color is safety? What is that sensation of safety? Maybe safety does feel like sitting on a beach and watching the waves. So maybe you can put like the sound of waves on your headphones and really just allow that feeling to expand throughout your body, because what that actually is doing is like that is imbuing your energetic field with the emotion of safety. And so you can create that for yourself in your body at any time. And the more that you do that, the more that will become like your natural state.
Yeah. It sounds almost like a form of meditation, but like on a conscious scale, instead of like having to close your eyes and go somewhere else, like just kind of channeling that energy.
That's exactly true. And it is kind of like a form of visualization of, even if you're creating something like out of nothing, or you're looking back on like a memory and thinking of it, like it does very much become real. You know, your mind doesn't really know the difference between what you're imagining and like what's actually happening in real life. Our memories are very unreliable anyway. So, you know, that's so cool. So one thing that I want to kind of go into is like the different kind of archetypes. Like, could you walk us through like some of your, I don't know, maybe like top 5 and how you use them, or maybe like a certain client that you've used a specific one with? Because I love stuff like that.
Yes. Okay. We'll talk about Aphrodite since we haven't covered her archetype yet, and that's y'all's.
Yeah.
So Aphrodite, of course, we know is the goddess of love, right? And a lot of people think that she's just this narcissistic, like, goddess of like who fucked up Rome and everything. But really, when you kind of work with like the energy of Aphrodite, either as an archetype or like as a goddess, like she's really all about like self-love. And of course, the world painted her out to be narcissistic, because women who love themselves and love their bodies, that's what we call them these days. And so working with Aphrodite, this has been something that's been completely magical for me to watch with my clients. And so I did a workshop last year where I showed people like how to interact with their guides and their deities. And one client, I hadn't done anything fitness and nutrition related. This was just a pure witchy spirit guide, fun little workshop. Aphrodite came in for her, and she had been struggling with binge eating disorder like her entire life, like full on. And Aphrodite came in and like she had her planned Friday night binge. She went and gotten the food and everything, and she was at home and she was eating, and mid binge, she felt like Aphrodite come in and tell her, you can stop. And she was able to stop mid binge, which
Why did that give me chills?
And yes. And like, you guys know how difficult it is to stop yourself when you are mid binge. And then she came on and like sent in our little group text for the workshop, like that this had happened. And I was just like stopped in my tracks, because I didn't really like, even though I've worked with guides and, you know, I'm a witch and everything, I didn't really see that it could have that deep of an impact on my clients. And so like Aphrodite has helped her. Another client, again, who I hadn't done anything fitness and nutrition related with, like has severe trauma from her past, like sexual assault trauma and everything, and like has really bad agoraphobia and was afraid to leave her house. And like Aphrodite came in for her, and she was very much like, I didn't think Aphrodite would ever pay attention to me kind of vibe. And she's been able to start leaving her house again, because Aphrodite kind of reminds her like, hey, take care of yourself. Have you drinking any water today? Maybe you should eat a meal. And it's like, you could say, sure, it might be like an imaginary friend if you want to view it like that, or it is this like energy or this angel or this entity that is like reminding you to take care of yourself.
Well, I feel like it's almost like allowing these women to identify with a role model that might not be a human in their life, but something they could look up to and identify with to be like a stronger or uplifted version of themselves, which I think is very cool. That's so interesting. I've never heard someone relate the two or even use these images to help people, if that makes sense. Like, so many people talk about like doing inner work and doing all of like the things you can do within your body, but not really on like a spiritual level. So it's interesting.
Very true. And it is super cool. Like Kendall was saying, to like be able to, because there might be moments where you don't feel like that kind of person. You don't feel like confident. You don't feel like a goddess yet. You don't feel powerful or anything. So I bet it's really helpful to pull from these archetypes that have these gifts when you don't feel like you quite have them yet, because we all have them. It's just sometimes the fear to step into what that looks like. So I feel like in that moment, she didn't feel like she had like the willpower to stop binge eating, and she pulled from someone who's like more confident and like loving and a goddess, and she's like, you can do this too. Like, you can be just like me. Yeah. I love that. That's really cool. What are the other ones?
Well, there's so many, right? And so I have clients who work with archangels, right? A little bit more on the Christian side of things. There are clients who work with Mother Mary and maybe even Mary Magdalene. And then I've got clients who work with Loki, you know? And so across the board, different entities or guides or angels. And so the thing that I like to tell people is that these guides always want to help you and they always want to support you. And so one of my main goddesses who really helped me a lot is the Morrigan. And so I was telling you guys, she corresponds with the freezing trauma response. And I've kind of built my programs off of her, because the aspect that I really love the most of her is she is a goddess of self-sovereignty for me more than anything. And so that's really like becoming the queen of your own world and like taking those actions towards changing the world and like creating that world that you want from a place of self-sovereignty instead of codependency, which when I got out of a narcissistic abusive relationship, like I wanted to be sure that that never happened again and that I was able to attract healthy relationships. And so what that required of me was looking at all of the little threads of codependency that were everywhere in my life, including coaching, including client relationships, not beyond just romantic relationships, and take those threads out so that I was attracting healthy relationships everywhere in my life. And so that's where the self-sovereignty aspect comes in.
Oh, that's so cool. Can we dive a little bit into Loki?
Yes.
I kind of want to. First thing that I love Marvel.
I knew you were going to talk about that.
The first thing I think of, I was like, you mean Loki from Marvel? Or nope. Yeah. So let's dive into, like, what is that archetype like?
Yeah, so I don't work with Loki personally, but with my clients, like, they talk about him like he's this energy that's just kind of like fucking with them a little bit, but in a like nice way. And they say things like, well, if you work with Loki, be sure you'll see spiders everywhere.
Oh my God.
I'm like, oh, no, thank you.
Yeah.
And like, it's different when at working with each guide is a little bit different and they have different lessons for you. And so Loki, he very much is a trickster and everything. And so kind of that trickster energy of like helping you to take care of yourself in that way, and like how different people perceive him is going to be a little bit differently. And so like for me, when I'm working with guides, sometimes it's like I need someone with a little bit of a firmer hand. And so for me lately, what's been coming in has been more of these like scary, like Egyptian deities where I'm like, the fuck is happening here? Y'all are scary looking. And they're like, exactly. You're not meditating every morning like you're supposed to. You go and you sit in your work chair and you pretend to meditate, but then you're just thinking about work. And I'm like, oh shit, y'all are calling me out.
Yeah.
And so sometimes like with those deities and archetypes, it's whatever you need that is going to support you to get to your goals is kind of what will come in. And so if any of the listeners are like, okay, I'm scared of this shit, I don't want anything. Well, then you might see your grandma. Right. And your grandma might be giving you advice, or it might be your future self. And so it's never going to be something that like you wouldn't be able to handle.
Yeah. I feel like I channel my past and future self a lot. And I think because sometimes I am nervous about like these powerful beings being kind of who I relate to, if that makes sense. When working with guides, do you often channel like multiple in a day, or is it kind of like a phase in your life you kind of consistently stick with one or two? How does that work?
So it's a little different for everybody. And then for me, it's definitely just a bunch of them. So I've got like my main few that I work with. So like the Morrigan and Aphrodite and another guide called Hecate. And then like lately in the past month, it's been like Anubis and Isis from Egypt coming in. And it's a little weird, but it's like they're here to teach me like certain lessons and certain things. And different guides like will come in when I need to like release something. So there's Thanatos, who is like the Greek personification of death. And when I saw him, I was like, the fuck are you doing here the first time? And like, he's always appeared to me when it's time for me to release something from my life, like something that I need to let go of, and like a metaphorical death, so to speak.
That makes sense.
Ooh, what is that?
Yeah.
When that happened, was there immediately something that came into your mind that was like, I know exactly what this is?
Yes. And so I was doing a guided like journey visualization. And at the time I was at a gym in Austin, which shall not be named. And I really like wanted to belong with this like group of entrepreneurs who also had YouTubes and big social media followings and businesses. So I felt like I belonged. And it was very much one of those things where, I mean, of course, like when creating something like Fitness Witchcraft, there were a lot of people who were like, you're a crazy bitch, like get the fuck out of here. And so I was very much trying to belong in a place that was like continuously trying to shove me out. And so I had a lot of fear around creating programs like this and like really speaking out about this more publicly instead of just kind of like keeping this in quiet and just doing this with my clients. And so when I went in to do a meditation that day, Thanatos was like, okay, like if you truly want to become the type of person who is limitless, because I had asked my guides, like, how can I become limitless? he was like, you have to be able to release these opinions of these people at this gym and move on from them. And like, he was saying like a metaphorical death of like the you who believes that they are limited by others' opinions.
Oh, I love that. That's so crazy because there can be a lot of like that energy in like a gym. And I know that we've experienced some of that before. And that's like one of the biggest reasons why we created this podcast is like to be that for other women that are wanting to feel safe, like in a gym environment, because it can be really scary, especially if like you're doing something that's like quote unquote outside like the norm. So I'm curious, like, what was it like? What was your response like from other people when you decided to step into your power and your genius?
Yeah, it was really difficult. So it was also a powerlifting gym. And so I was going in there as the bodybuilder, wearing my cute little outfits and everything.
They're like, first of all, wire your hair. You're not supposed to be here.
Exactly. And I really wanted to powerlift.
Yeah.
I wanted to squat, bench, and deadlift because I'm really strong in all three of them. And so it was very much a thing where because I'd been in a narcissistic abusive relationship, I didn't really know what good treatment looked like. So while I'd been treating at like a -2 in that abusive relationship, these people at the gym were treating me like a 2 out of 10. And I thought it was great.
You're like, that's a level up.
Right.
Exactly. And so it took me a really long time to realize like every time like I would go in and like, again, like I have a social media, I run my business online, like all of these things, but these people at the gym who ran the gym, they had bigger social medias. And anytime someone would visit them, like a TikToker or an Instagrammer who was bigger, they wouldn't talk to me. It was like I was like the black sheep where they were like not acknowledging.
They're like, okay, we're not friends anymore.
Which we've kind of experienced that in certain relationships too, or just experiences at some point in our like social media growth.
Yeah.
Like there's always going to be people like that. And I always feel like, at least personally, it's more of a projection of them and their ego and their self, not really who you are or what you're doing.
And so I actually had like the soon to be former owner of this gym, because that's how bad it got, was gossiping about like what I was wearing. He was talking bad about me to like employees at the gym.
That's messed up.
Yeah. And
sorry.
And yeah, thankfully it was an experience that really helped me to grow, because there was a moment where he confronted me in the gym once he knew that I'd heard all of these things that he'd been saying about me, and essentially listed out in the middle of the gym, like in front of everyone, exactly why he was right about all of the things that he'd been saying about me.
That breaks my heart and
Wow.
makes me so upset for you.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you're moved on from that area, but that's insane.
That
Yeah.
is crazy.
And so it sent me into a full PTSD like flashback, because
Of course.
instead of him, I was just like, my brain was like, this is exactly what my ex-boyfriend did. List out all of my faults. Like, he was like, I'm sorry, but it's all true. And like all of this. And so thankfully, like, he's getting removed as CEO of that gym and
As he
everything.
should.
As he should. But it was also one of those things where all of the other people who ran the gym just kind of tried to appease me and shove it under the rug. And so it's like they were pretending to be my friend so that I wouldn't talk about it. And so it was really me having to like step into my power and be like, no, I deserve a lot better than this. And I am doing something really cool and really big here. And I deserve to be around people who see me as such.
Wow. That is crazy. Like, that's some serious, unnecessary gym drama. Like, why do you have anything better to do with your life?
It's like such a safe space, like for us especially, but
Yeah.
for so many people, and to make that not safe for you, even though you're doing exactly what they're doing, just expressing it differently. Maybe like even if you are or aren't, like there's no right in judging someone else for the path they're on. That's insane to me.
Well, I'm glad. Hopefully you found a new gym.
Please. Okay,
Yes.
good.
Good. And it feels a lot better at this new gym?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay,
like
good.
anything would be better than that.
Yeah. Anything would be better than that. Wow. So one of the questions that we like to ask all of our listeners, like when we start wrapping up, is like, do you remember like a specific moment that you knew how powerful you really were?
This is always my favorite question.
There's a specific memory that I had. I was still in the abusive relationship at the time, and it really shocked me. But I was doing a meditation to speak with my future self, and she kind of showed me. She was like, Emily, you are meant to do this fitness witchcraft thing. And in my mind, I was like, that's crazy. There's no way my business is going to dive bomb if I do this. And she showed me, she was like, you're going to impact millions of people. And that it still very much felt like, nah, no way, that's not going to be me. She's like, you're going to publish books about this. You're going to change so many lives with this. And you really need to start believing that you can do this, because you are going to, but you have to believe that you can first. And so that has been a memory that I have doubted probably 1,000 times, right? Because there have been struggles. There have been really, really low moments where I was like, okay, maybe if I just, make enough money to survive, right? Maybe if I just impact just enough people and everything. But I've been continuously brought back to that memory and like, no, like your impact is meant to be so much bigger. And so like that is a memory that really sticks with me, and like continuously revisiting my future self and those memories whenever I do doubt myself, to reconnect to that vision and be like, okay, I'm remembering that I am powerful. I'm remembering my power. I'm remembering like the impact that I'm supposed to have. And that is always going to be so much bigger than whatever fears are going on in the moment.
Yeah. And it is so easy when you do have this big, seemingly to maybe to the outside world or to you, like unrealistic goal. We were literally talking about this last night in the Know Your Power program, but you start to like bring that goal down. Like instead of impacting millions, you're like, maybe like 1,000. Maybe, okay, let's do, how about 5? You start like downgrading this ultimate vision that you have for yourself because of like fear or, worry of what other people are going to think, or imposter syndrome, whatever it might be. So I'm so glad that you didn't do that, and that you keep choosing every day to continue to be in your genius and your power and not let that pull you back, because you could easily just like, I'm just going to go back to doing what I was doing, because that would be the easier route. But long term, you wouldn't be living your purpose. And actually it would be a disservice to everyone else that you're helping if you didn't step into your genius. So I love that.
Thank you.
And I loved learning about what you do, and I appreciate you being on the podcast.
I find it genuinely so fascinating,
Yes.
and I'm going to go do a ton more research once this is over.
It really is. Could you tell the listeners where they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on at myogi_fit, EMYOGI_fit.
It'll be down below also.
Yes.
Yes. And so that's Instagram, TikTok. You can also find me on Facebook, Emily Flood. I have a Facebook group called Fitness Tips for Witches and Spiritual Women.
Cool.
And then my podcast is called Witchy Wellness with M. And so I've got like 76 episodes so far and counting.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
we'll put all of that in the description, guys. What I'm also going to do is put the was it the fitness archetype quiz? Okay, I wanted to say
Go
right.
take it.
Yeah, so you guys can take it and like read about it and like really start diving into her content. But thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me.
Of
Thank
course.
you.
All right, guys, that is it for today. And as always, we love you all so much, and you are more powerful than you think.
Bye.